going to start my story at the end and then circle back. My story ends with a naked Jewish lawyer serving me pie. My life was not always like this. I was married for 30 years. It was a decent marriage. I had met my future husband. We were both teaching at Paul Robeson High School on the south side of Chicago, and he was a great teacher, just amazing. A little stuffy, though. Like, he would never take his coffee from the communal coffee pot. He'd always bring coffee from home with Kona beans, freshly ground. He wasn't a lot of fun, but I was pushing 30, and I thought, I need to be married. I grew up in an era where if you're not married, you're a loser. Nobody wants you, and I had been dating bad boys, pot smokers, drummers. It was time to settle down, so we got married, and I traded in my wild ways for a co-op apartment and a cappuccino maker. And it was a good enough marriage. We connected very well from the eyebrows up. But our sex life had flatlined, and I blame myself because when I had met him, I was momentarily thin and very quickly regained my natural shape, and so I called him on it. I said, we don't have sex, and he said, Margie, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I'm not attracted to you at this weight. So I cried a lot, but it was good enough. At least I had a husband. At least I wasn't walking through the world alone. And I would still be living that good enough life, except everything changed one day. I am at work, I get a phone call, it's my son, he's an adult, still living at home, and he goes, Mom, the FBI's here, Dad's been arrested. What? Yeah, he was at the airport, trying to meet some. I had to get home. I had to get home. That's made no sense. I came home and there were 7 FBI agents going through my house. And they're wearing bulletproof vests. They're going into every room. They're looking for laptops. And I had cleaned that weekend. Thank God. You have company, you clean, right? But they sit me down did you know your husband was at the airport? No. Did you know he'd been corresponding with a woman who had offered her 13-year-old daughter? No. Did you know he had $400 cash in his pocket when they picked him up? I didn't know. I didn't know what to make of it because, those pictures, is it a rabbit or is it a duck? And you can see them both, but not at the same time. Who is this guy, straight, solid, great teacher, good values, who? I just had to talk to him. But you can't just, waltz into the prison. Why is that funny? There's background checks. It takes weeks. And for weeks, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I was just tied up in knots. I was worried. I was worried about him. What's happening to him? Is he getting beat up? Do they have cappuccino? And I was worried about me. I had a mortgage payment. I had a car payment. We hadn't figured in incarceration when we did the family budget. I finally get okayed for a visit, and I almost didn't get in. They have this metal detector, and I'm going through, and it beep. I'm like, what? I take off my earrings, beep, empty, beep. Fortunately, there were some mafia wives in the waiting room. They're like, honey, are you wearing an underwire? Take off your bra. which is not a good look for me. So I get in, and we're sitting, and I see him, and he says, Margie, I want to make amends to you. Very formal. I want to make it up to you. And I'm like, how do you make it up to me that you were trying to have sex with a 13-year-old? Like, what are you going to do, fuck an old lady and split the difference? That wasn't what he had in mind. He said from the window of his cell, he could see these double-decker buses going by. He goes, when I get out of here, I'm going to take you on a double-decker bus ride. Oh, so he told me I wasn't going to go through with it. It was a fantasy. It got out of hand. And I believed him because I've had some fantasies that I wouldn't want known publicly. I mean, at that moment, I was fantasizing about him being run over by a double-decker bus. So I didn't know what to believe, but it didn't make sense. So I said, well, why did you have the $400 cash? He said, well, I was going to meet them as friends. I was going to take them to lunch. I still couldn't make sense of it. I couldn't see him a different way. I was used to seeing him a certain way for 30 years. The little things, though, was the little betrayals, the little thread that unravels the sweater. The day he was arrested, he had emailed me that morning. He used to pick me up at the train after work, and he'd emailed me and said he couldn't meet my train that day. And I'm thinking, if you weren't going to go through with it, or even if you were, even if you're going to have a wild sexcapade, can't you be done by 5:47? And I started realizing even when he's trying to come clean, he's lying to me. He didn't have my back. He didn't care about me. And I'm going through, months are going by, and I was just worried all the time and just tied in knots, but I hadn't cried. I needed to cry. I needed that catharsis, so I went to a blues bar. The problem is the bar was in Chestnut Hill. If you guys know Philly, it's kind of a ritzy area, so none of the musicians had really been through anything. So try to picture it, it's like da-da-da-da was mildly inconvenient. So I'm sitting at the bar, and I'm drinking whiskey, and I start singing louder than the band. Like Janice, take another little bit. And they're like, ma'am, you have to shut up. I said, well, then give me something I can wallow in. They said, just be quiet or you have to leave. So I left. And I'm sitting on the curb in front of the Mermaid Tavern, and I'm thinking, this is my lowest point ever. I've been kicked out of a blues bar for being too sad. But the thing is, when you hit bottom, there's nowhere to go but up. And I realized I worried about him, but I didn't miss him. And I realized that this was my chance to put my life back together in a different way. And maybe I'd go back to those dive bars and those drummers because I want to have fun and I want to have sex. Lots and lots of sex. Started going out, started meeting people, and my point is, sometimes getting what you think you need keeps you from getting what you really want. And my message to all of you is, if your life ever falls apart, this is your chance to put it back together better. And if you can just keep walking through, at the end, there might be a naked Jewish lawyer feeding you apple crumb pie.
Marjorie Winther!